Hello and welcome to DesignCast, a podcast where I interview a wide range of excellent guests in design and STEAM education to get their unique perspectives. My name is Jason Reagan, and I use my 20 plus years of experience as a design educator to dig deep into complex issues. This podcast has one simple mission: to create a community of people around the world that are interested in design and STEAM education. Each episode, I chat with guests from all corners of the design world, from classroom teachers to authors and even to educational consultants. We discuss a wide range of topics that we feel are relevant today. I do want to ask you that if you're enjoying this podcast, please leave a review, rate, subscribe, share, or download from your favorite podcasting app. This helps the podcast get discovered by listeners that might not find it otherwise. Also, it helps me to continually define the direction of future guests and episodes. Feel free to drop by my website, www.jasonreagan.ga, to leave me a comment or to sign up to be considered as a future guest on future episodes. Also, don't forget to stop by Anchor and leave me a voice clip that could even end up in an upcoming show. Thanks for listening, so let's get to it. All right, welcome back to another episode of DesignCast. This is episode 45, which is absolutely just shocking to me that we have been on such a long journey together in such a short time. And so I hope that you're continuing to enjoy what we have to offer you on DesignCast. So this week, I had the great opportunity to speak to John Zobrist. John is the K-12 Head of Innovation at UWC East Campus in Singapore, and he brings more than 2 decades of experience nurturing student innovators to identify social, environmental, and economic problems and apply design thinking and creative concepts to improve individuals and communities. We had an awesome time talking about his journey into education and what his vision is for the future in his new role. I'm confident that you will enjoy listening to what he has to say. Remember to check the show notes to find out more about how to contact him. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy this chat with John.
This podcast is a proud member of the Teach Better Podcast Network. Better today, better tomorrow, and the podcast to get you there. Explore more podcasts at www.teachbetterpodcastnetwork.com. Now let's get on to the episode.
Welcome back to another episode of DesignCast, and I am absolutely humbled and thrilled to have John Zobrist with me here today. John, how are you?
I'm very well, Jason. Thanks for inviting me.
It's such a pleasure to have you, John. I know we have a lot of common connections across this very small world that we call design education, and I'm sure we'll get into that. So can you just tell everybody a little bit about where you currently are teaching and what you're doing?
Yeah, thanks, Jason. I'm currently at the United World College in Singapore. I'm at the East Campus, which started in 2012, and I've been there since 2012 as the head of design.
Fantastic. And I know that you have a new role, and we're going to get into that in a little bit, but I want to ask you a little bit about how you became an educator. What led you to that?
Basically, I did a very traditional route. I've been listening to your great show, Jason, and it's amazing how a lot of the guys got into teaching in a very long directional way. But mine basically very, very straightforward. I was very passionate about D&T, design and technology in the UK. I was very passionate about, as a junior school kid, taking things apart, putting things together, working with building things out of Lego and Meccano kits and playing things with Airfix kits. And then basically, when I went from Switzerland to the UK, I went to a place called Fleetwood in the mid-80s and started secondary school there. And back then it was a subject called CDT, which was craft design and technology, which was a real mishmash of, wood, metal, plastic work, graphical, technical drawing, textiles, fashions, food, nutrition, a real mishmash of things. And I really enjoyed the whole practical approach to it. basically went all the way through with doing my GCSEs in that, my A-levels. I had a hugely supportive D&T team there, teachers who were very, very, very passionate about forward-thinking things at the time. I mean, I clearly remember we were one of the only schools who had one of the first Max LC2s, and, you know, it's just an incredible thing to go through compared to like your normal lessons where you're just stuck in front of a pretty tedious, boring lessons for me. So I really enjoyed the problem-solving things from that. So I did my A-levels in DT, did that with Ross McGill, who you've had on the show, and we basically both got told by the DT teachers at Fleetwood High School to go and do a teaching degree in D&T, and that's what we did. I went off to Sheffield Hallam University to do a Bachelor of Education. Thoroughly enjoyed every moment of it, and again, really because of my background and interest in, you know, sports and thrill-seeking sports like skiing and rock climbing and mountain biking and all those kind of things. I really just loved that part of the world as well in terms of building bikes, and then I ended up working in a bike shop for many years and going to bike exhibitions and just seeing how, you know, material science is developing those products and making them lighter and making things better, and it just really interested there, and I just wanted to be more involved in that. So yeah, I went to Sheffield and I did my 4-year Bachelor of Education degree in Design and Technology Secondary Education. Yeah, and I finished that back in 97. That's when I finished that, yeah.
You know, I love to hear about these journeys that people take, and to hear that you had time in a bike shop and you tinkered around with those things and were, you know, asking questions about how materials work together and things like that. I mean, I think that's something a lot of times that our students are missing in their extra school life, you know, outside of school. They don't get a lot of times those experience. Do you kind of feel the same way?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, here at UWC, I actually for 2 years, I ran an after school activity, basically just repairing bikes. So we're a pretty big campus. You know, we've got nearly 3,000 students on campus. We've got a boarding house. We've got security. There's quite a lot of bikes that come on and off campus, and then a lot of them are locked up and then left and then abandoned. So I organised like an activity where we upcycle and repair old abandoned bicycles and try and then give them back to the community. And it was actually phenomenal how many both boys and girls wanted to be part of that, just to learn how to change an inner tube or change a tire or, you know, change a chain. So much learning. And again, you know, it's hands-on. We're a very lucky school. We've got amazing, gifted, talented academic students. All of our guys go into the IB diploma, nearly 300 and something students that do the diploma every year. There's not many schools that do that. So to get those guys to focus on a bit of hands-on and actually see the purpose of what this, you know, the end bike is going to be given to charity or given to somebody as well is a great accomplishment. But I agree, there's not enough hands-on, just simple things like changing an inner tube on a bike. You'd be surprised how kids just like, they're so blown away when you take that tire off the rim in a second. They just can't believe it, you know. So, but you know, it's not YouTube video. It's actually, you know, and we had a great uptake. We had about 30 kids take that, and we did that for 2 semesters at a time, and got crazy. We ran out of bikes to fix in the end, so we had to to give it
Absolutely. Oh man, that's great. I love to hear about these practical things like that. So that's kind of how you got to where you are. What's been your professional journey as far as how you came to Singapore?
Yeah, so I've been very fortunate, Jason. I got an amazing job. I mean, I was actually to start before Singapore, my first 2 years in Blackpool teaching there, which was a pretty hardcore school. Blackpool is like the Las Vegas of England. It's, you know, we have an interesting blend of students that are coming in there. A lot of them are seasonal people that come in just to run those casinos and stalls for the summer season. So they bring their kids along, and then they're literally only there for a few terms. So that was a real eye-opener. My 4-year degree gave me a lot of extensive experience as well all around Sheffield and the Yorkshire, South Yorkshire area as well. So a real diverse range of schools. But I always wanted to teach abroad. My mum and dad both have been working abroad. So I was pretty quickly looking to go overseas. And the job with the ESF in Hong Kong came up, and I went over there in 1999 to South Island School. I went over as just a normal design technology teacher. And what was really cool was there was a guy there who was coming to his retirement age, and they gave me then the opportunity to be like an acting head of faculty in my second year of being there. So I ended up being at South Island for 7 years, and the network that the ESF has got within Hong Kong is incredible. I mean, it's in terms of all the D&T teachers you have in such a small populated city, and the support that they had was fantastic. So I really enjoyed working there, and again, very dynamic team, young enthusiastic D&T teachers, great kids, great resources, none of the negativity that you were getting in the UK with D&T as a subject. Why would you not want to stay. So that's what I did. I stayed there and really enjoyed the work there. And then we had a bit of an issue with pollution in Hong Kong at the time as well. So this was, my son was born and we just wanted to try something else. So we actually went to the Middle East for a year. I went to St. Christopher's in Bahrain, Kingdom of Bahrain. Tiny country, tiny place. You can literally travel it around in a weekend. It was actually a fantastic school, but we didn't really have much to go for it as a country, as with a young family. So luckily I managed to get poached to go back to Hong Kong, and then I ended up going to West Island School as the head of faculty for design and technology, and I did 6 years there. And again, during that 6 years, I also became the curriculum manager for the ESF group for design and technology secondary, which I did for 4 years. That was an incredible journey because I was able to organise professional development for teaching staff, for D&T teachers twice a year. I actually introduced support staff to have professional development as well. So that was something that never happened before. So getting the technicians in to come into some of our sessions, some of our meetings, and a lot of those PDs we'd go up to China and, we'd go to an injection molding plant or a die casting plant, or we'd go and see a food production line like Pizza Express to see how they do chill blast freezing. So a lot of authentic things that then we can bring back to the classroom. So that really helped me build a real network of, expertise within the ESF. And that was great. And also I managed to get people in from overseas to run sessions on, we had Brian Russell in to do some GCSE work. We had Dave Ardley came in before that as well to do some IB stuff. So we had a lot of different people coming in and out to share the expertise as well. But I think my point is, I've been very lucky to work with schools that have got the funding and management are backing everything. They're saying, well, we can see the point of doing this. And I think that's something that has really helped my career. And I know that there's been colleagues who, well, there's even now people banging their head against the wall where the leadership team don't quite get what this subject is about and how important it is for students to be doing what they're doing, so it makes sense. Anyway, and then from that came to Singapore in 2012.
What a journey, man. I'll tell you, I can't say enough good things about ESF and the programs that they run. And, it's funny because in Asia, you mentioned this, that there's not the pushback on D&T that you find in a lot of other regions in the world. And I think it's because they see the value. I think, too, a lot of the parents are involved in, at least if it's not directly in D&T type careers, it's somehow related to that. And, you mentioned about being able to go into mainland China and see injection molding and to see factories and things. And those are things you can't really do in a lot of other places. And so I think that it is a hotbed and it is a really fertile soil for folks to learn, to really do a lot of good things with D&T. And so have you found that to be true in Singapore as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just going back to Hong Kong, we were working with Philips and we were able just to go into their R&D department where they're prototyping and modeling and doing all the testing and things, and at the time it was A-level students to be able just to go in there and actually see these guys actually doing the work and what it looks like and seeing that it's, exactly very closely tied to what the design process is all about was one thing. But on a second thing is what was a big eye-opener for me when I was in Singapore here in my second year, 2014, I basically organised the International DT Conference, which was a huge success. We had 160 delegates. We had the Ministry of Education from Brunei, Malaysia, Singapore and Indonesia here. With that, I also invited members from the UK, from the D&T Association. So we had quite a few of those guys come in. To me, it was a bit of a shock. It felt like I'd been out of the UK maybe too long, even though I've been a very strong, active member of the D&T Association. But we had a presenter who talked about, craft, how D&T is so important to be teaching craft skills and technical skills. And to me, it just didn't make sense because in Asia, the kids don't, our kids don't tend to go and become carpenters or plumbers or electricians. I mean, that's just the way it is in Singapore and Hong Kong and probably most other parts of Asia. Most of our kids are very lucky and are able to go and do higher education and are very academic. But this is where I realized that the UK, this is where they've been flogging a dead horse basically because they're trying to promote the subject to kids who are less academic and less able. And there's been a lot of talk about this and a lot of stuff written and I've commented on a lot of things here as well, but there's a lot of stuff in the UK that could have gone the other way if they would have just promoted it more towards, the programming, the systems, the design thinking, those kind of things rather than let's stick to the traditional craft and making. So I think that's the world we live in here in Asia with D&T, and D&T is thriving. I mean, schools are throwing money at it. But if D&T isn't happening, I mean, I know I keep mentioning D&T. If it's not D&T, then it's a maker space or an incubation lab. It's something
Sure.
else because D&T is an expensive subject to set up. It doesn't have
Sure
to
it
be.
is.
Doesn't have to be. That's the fear by a lot of leadership teams. But again, once you've got something in place and you get enterprise involved and businesses and partners coming in, like here we've got the head of Google here, we've got Facebook, we've got Grab AI people as parents. I've got people who are doing VR and AR and all this stuff. And it's just, I've just got to get the parents into school, obviously, once COVID goes away. But what an opportunity to use actually the real world again to get these students absolutely enthusiastic about something they can make a relationship to, rather than let's make some wooden boxes and let's work out a wood joint. What wood joint, guys, we're going to use on the corner? It's like, what's the bloody point? So that's just my view.
I think that you're on the right track as far as your train of thought there, and I think design thinking and that protocol, or whatever protocol you decide to choose, or whatever process, I think that's what we have to really focus on a lot of instances, because rarely are any of my students or your students going to become plumbers or become factory workers, but they will be working with plumbers and factory workers. Yeah. And so it's about knowing how to work with those folks and to have the communication skills, the collaboration skills, those kinds of things to make to happen. And empathy is a big part of that, I feel like. And I think that's something we have to really push, is the whole empathy aspect. And so, wow, that's exciting. I love to hear how you've come to where you are. It sounds like you and I have been in Asia around the same amount of time, because I came in 99 and have been back and forth a lot too. And so tell me about the design and the D&T program that's happening at your school.
So yeah, I'm here at East Campus and we work fairly closely with Dover. We've got Carl Warren there as the head of DT. We are very fortunate here because we're not tied to any national curriculum. We don't have to follow the Singapore curriculum. We don't have to follow the UK curriculum or anything like this. We've got this amazing flexibility to have been able to write our own curriculum. So, back in 2013 or something, 14, just after I got everything set up here, we basically articulated our own K-12 D&T curriculum, and we looked at things like the IB, and we looked at the A-level and the HSE in Australia, and design courses in South Africa and all over the world. And it's really, design thinking courses, D school courses, MIT school. So we had this amazing opportunity to basically look and benchmark our own curriculum. And that's what I think, again, that's why we've been able to be quite flexible with what we're doing, especially in middle school, where we want kids, like I said before, we don't want us to be the sage on the stage. We want us to be like the guide on the side, where we're not focusing on craft-based products where they're all making the beautiful same thing and going home with exactly the same thing. We in middle school, we're really getting students to focus and work in teams and work like real design teams, collaborating and getting to project manage and budget and problem solve together and actually achieve a feasible outcome to a problem that they can actually relate to than some kind of far-fetched world that they don't know. So that's what we've mainly been doing in middle school. Unfortunately, we only get 80 minutes a week time with the middle school students because it's on a weekly timetable thing. It's not great. We'd love it to be twice a week, but because of that greater exposure to D&T closer rather than a week apart, it doesn't really help them. But in high school, so what we're doing, if I talk about grade 9 and 10, we are currently doing IGCSE, the Cambridge courses. We offer food and nutrition, resistant materials, and systems control. System control is huge. Combined with all those courses, we have about 140 students that do that in grade 9. We are looking at a college to actually ditch the IGCSE and come up with our own grade 9-10 program, which is going to be very exciting because for us, the IGCSE is a large wall. So if I can explain that bit, let me explain that a bit better. So we do the IB diploma. I absolutely love. I enjoy all the topics. I can see the relationships to industry and the real world. And then we do a similar thing in middle school, but then we have this thing in the middle, the IGCSE. So in the next couple of years, as we start developing our own grade 9-10 program, design thinking program, we can sort of make that blending in a bit better than what it is now.
I think a lot of schools, and I'm thinking now about maybe schools that do IB just in general, struggle with that building of a curriculum sometimes because they've been told they have this framework, but they don't have the content, or the standards to go with that. So when you guys endeavored in 2014-ish or whatever to begin creating these benchmarks, what was that process like? What did you use? Did you use the IGSE to build it on, or what was your overarching skeleton, so to speak?
Yeah, it was pretty tough. I mean, we spent about 3 months individually doing a lot of research into current curriculums all around the world. We decided to actually reverse engineer from the IB diploma course, but not every part of it. So obviously in grade 11, 12, we have to use those conceptual understandings and elaborations from the IB. And then the GCSE one, the grade 9-10 one, we basically kept that pretty blank because we knew we were moving away from the IGCSE model. So we've basically tried to then bring the IB down into middle school, and we looked at the bigger concepts of sustainability, what the design process is. We looked at the materials and the manufacturing, and then also obviously, computational thinking, those kind of things as well, which is something that the IB are going to move into as well with the new guide, which I'm also part of. We need to make it more local focus. So that's what we've also tried to do. But then also getting the elaborations of getting actually when we're asking students to do this particular thing, what would it look like? What is the evidence going to look like? So we can then also build the assessment. It took a long time, man. It took about 18 months to do all that work. And that was with a team of about 6 people and cross campus working with Dover as well, and regular meetings. And then from that, building our own sort of UWC curriculum. And then in that, working out which part of a particular project is a student being a critical thinker or a self-manager or all these kind of things as well. That took a long time, and it was well worth it, because what helped with that process is getting everybody on board and everybody understanding the vision. I've been very, very lucky that my team since 2012 to 13, and then from 2013 onwards, we've had a team, and we've had pretty much the same guys within the team all the time. So that's been very helpful. I've not had a lot of movement with staff. Yeah, and we revisit it. Obviously, it's really important to revisit those benchmarks and just see what else is going on still. We're still looking at what, the national curriculum looks like. We're still looking at what the IB are looking. We're looking at the MYP, how different courses are assessing things. I mean, I think the MYP is a bit of an overkill with the assessment, but and then you lose what it's all about again. So I think I'm so lucky at UWC because they just trust the teachers to know what we're looking for, and we're all professionals at the end of the day, and as long as we've got targets that are credible, I think we're absolutely fine to do that.
Absolutely, man. You're speaking my language, because I think that in many cases design and D&T are not given the same amount of time in the timetable, and yet they're asked to do the same amount of work with more kids. In a lot of cases, there's not a lot of pull out kids. There's not a lot of kids who are going to ESL classes at the time, or it does make a lot of challenges, especially when you want to do some practical things and some skills building and whatnot. So I was just curious, because that's something I think a lot of schools struggle with, is that whole how you develop those progressive benchmarks, and how do you measure them and that kind of thing. And, maybe sometimes it's good to go to an external body, or maybe it's good to just do something in-house with, what you think your local community needs. And so I was just curious kind of how you did that when you mentioned that.
And a lot of it depends on frequency as well. That's what I was trying to explain. The
Absolutely.
frequency if you're only seeing the students once a week the whole year, then of course you've got progression naturally through different design challenges. But if you're seeing the students like on a carousel system, which is the worst in the world, then what term 1 looks like should be completely different to term 2. And then how do you map all those skills and get the progression? It's a bloody nightmare.
Right.
So I agree with you. We wish we had a bit more time, and we've also tried to go across interdisciplinary with some projects as well, but that again is a challenge for the other guys with their assessments. So we're hoping with the grade 9-10 course that we're going to start developing, there are going to be some greater opportunities there, I hope, because we'll have more time with the kids.
That sounds great. I mean, I find that to be true too, even at the many schools I've been to, that especially that grade 9 and 10 tends to be the sweet spot, because it seems that there's time that opens up for some reason with them a little bit more. I don't know if it's languages or what it is. They tend to get there's a bit more flexibility once they start getting into more of a high school age. And so that sounds great. We've talked a lot about that. I want to hear about this new role. I'm really, really excited to hear about this new role that you have. Can you tell us a little bit about that, John?
Yeah, so I've got to, I'm going to be, my new title is Head of Innovation. I think it's an absolute shocking title. I really don't understand what it quite is. I've sort of researched it. I'll tell you what, I've researched this title, Innovation, and it's actually quite common in a lot of industries. I've got a friend of mine who works for Kerry Foods. He's the head of innovation, and he does some incredible stuff with Ben & Jerry ice cream and all this kind of cool stuff. That's not my job, unfortunately, but it's interesting looking at the word innovation. In some schools, it's about, somebody being responsible for digital platforms or for different technologies or implementing, Apple products or whatever. Yeah, my role, very unique, very different. I'm very fortunate to have had a donor, actually got a parent who's thrown some cash into the foundation, the UWC Foundation on our campus, and basically promoting innovation within the school. What that means, what that will look like, is a 2-year role, and hopefully if everything goes well, we'll hope that grant will continue to come, donor will come, and we might even end up having another building. But what we're doing at the moment is we are looking at linking things up with industry and businesses, and a lot of this is actually quite common maybe in some schools, but it's not going to be a curriculum, because we have students who are already trying to do their IoTs and trying to brand things and market things and produce things and upscale things and all these kind of apps and platforms and all these kind of things. So it's quite a unique bunch of students who just need the guidance to understand how they can actually get this thing up and running. So it's like a startup. So I'm like a startup incubation manager, but at the same time, I'm also going to be bringing in people and getting talks organized from industry. We've got Dyson here, we've got Bosch, we've got all sorts of big groups of people, but just getting them to come in and tell the story to get students to understand what the real world of work looks like. Because our international students, we have over 75 international countries represented, UWC here, all sorts of different backgrounds. They've got no idea what it really looks like to be an AI manager for a bank or, whatever. This is what innovation will look like at our place, where I'll be trying to connect people and give students who really want the opportunity to use and strategize. Because at the end of the day, innovation is a mindset. And I think I've been very fortunate to get this job, because I think with the design thinking mindset and, all these kind of things, for us, it's very natural to, problem solve and systems think and time plan and all these kind of things. But for some other people, that sort of creativity takes also a bit longer. So yeah, it's a bit of a complex role. I haven't actually started the role yet, so I'm hoping that's the way it's going to go. So and it's been great listening to your show, Jason, because you've got you've got people on. You've had people on like Amanda Presky and Liz Gallo, and their stories and how they're turning e-waste into a successful product and a successful brand. And that's innovation. Okay, so innovation isn't just about a particular product, it's how they got there and how to set up an IP or how to brand it, or is there any conflict with the school doing this? Is there any conflict with the Ministry of Manpower in your country? So there's a lot of legality things here as well that we never talk about as teachers. We don't do that as part of our curriculum. That's what I'm hoping to be doing and getting some stakeholders involved as well. One exciting one I want to talk about very quickly is Josh Tetrick, who was a alum speaker at one of our graduations, and he's the guy who's just developed the chicken that's come from the lab-grown chicken.
The lab chicken, yeah.
He doesn't like to. Don't tell him I said that. And he also did the egg that doesn't come from a chicken. I don't know if you...
Oh, okay. No, I haven't heard of that one.
So good. Yeah. So he's like good food. So he's investing in production to be in Singapore, and that's going to start very soon. And 5 of our guys from school actually were the first people in the world to go and taste this in a restaurant just before Christmas. So again, he's a very innovative guy. He's trying to save the planet, and that's what we should be doing, looking at more sustainable ways of doing things. So that's another thing we're going to be looking at, the ways of food production, food innovation, sourcing food, all these kind of things as well. So lots of stuff on my plate right now. I've just got to work out what to do in what order. That's going to be the challenge for me.
So you've become a project manager is what you're telling me.
Trying to, yeah. So it's been tough because at the same time, I mean, I've been a head of DT for 20 years, a long time. I've been teaching for 23 years. I think it's something like that. I'm still teaching the IB diploma because obviously I'm still part of the work I'm doing at The Hague with the curriculum review group.
Sure.
So I'm glad I'm still doing that. But at the end of the day, I've given up all my responsibility as head of faculty, and Kate, who's in the team, will take that over, and she'll do a great job. But it's going to be an interesting journey, and my mindset and my calendar change. Everything changes from now. Like I usually know what happens in January, at school.
Right,
now I've got to think of I've got to work things out. It's good. It's a good challenge. It's going to be good. It's going to be great.
That sounds really, really exciting. One of my roles is also the career-related program coordinator at my school, which is at the same time as the DP. And it sounds a lot like what I do is I'm having to create time to go out and find opportunities for students to do internships and apprenticeships and connect with professionals. So it sounds quite similar. We'll have to keep in touch. I want to hear all about how that's going to work for you because that sounds really exciting.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of guys that are doing this already, but it's always a bit of an add-on. It's always been a bit of a bolt-on. Like even when I was in Hong Kong, it was always a bit of a bolt-on trying to create these opportunities. Whereas now I've got no excuse. I have to go out and get.
You have people, to make it happen. That's
I've got to get these guys in and squeeze their arms.
I feel like you said there's something about this. There's a limited amount of time that you're going to do this. It's not permanent, or what's the plan there?
The donor, the way the cash works out is basically obviously having to pay for some of my timetabling, and then also hopefully we'll be doing some like makeathons or hackathons or some events as well in the next 2 years. So it's the timeline's 2 to 3 years. I've got to be innovating. I mean, that's the weird thing. I've got to be taking risks. I've got to be taking gambles, trying things out, short term, long term things. But fortunately, if it doesn't work out, I'll just go back to my role as head of design. But
Sure.
I really want this to work out and be incredible, because like I mentioned before, the college has got such incredible trust in the profession of all the staff within the organisation to do their absolute best, and allow people to take a few risks and gambles and try things out. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But here, with the projects I've got and the contacts with the parents and the alumni people we've just got incredible guys connected across the whole UWC platform around the world. I've already been in touch with UWC Changshu and UWC Maastricht and UWC Dover's already. These guys will all be able to help out, and as a community, we can hopefully get stuff together that then helps the broader community as well. So fingers crossed, Jason, it'll all work out beautifully. Magic.
Oh man, it sounds really, really exciting. And do you see maybe any connections potentially in the future with how the D&T program is run? Do you see maybe some crossover effects at all?
Yeah, interesting question. So going back a few years, we had quite a lot of people coming in because we're a K-12 campus. We had a lot of teachers from other areas of the school, from junior school, kindergarten, coming into D&T labs, wanting to know about plastic recycling, for example. How does it work? Or how does timber do this? Or how we tried to do, as again, as a bolt-on to our week, we did things after school or gave up our free periods. So that sort of started. Then it became quite a demanding thing. So we actually ended up opening up a community lab, which was another space in the school, run by an external group, Sustainable Living Lab, incredible guys. And they actually work all day. They're there till about 10 o'clock at night. So it's basically a makerspace. Now, this is quite rare. In a lot of schools, you'll either have a D&T department or a makerspace. So we have both. So the D&T curriculum can still stay within the D&T curriculum, and these guys are just doing D&T and after-school activities. But then other teachers and other external people, the Singaporean community, can come in and use the community lab. So they do a lot of work down there already with other partners and the Ministry of Education. So that sort of happened. And then I think with my role, innovation, the plan is that people don't see it as D&T, they do see it as something slightly different. And I'll be looking at other parts of the school, such as like the food, maybe environmental design, sustainability design, inclusive design, working with our elderly. We have a lot of service projects that we work with our local elderly homes and Parkinson and arthritis. So I know a lot of that sort of stuff happens in D&T as well, but my role is really to try and disconnect this from D&T, to give students the opportunity, the students who want it, because it's not going to be a curriculum, remember, students the opportunity then to jump on board and say, right, I'm really interested in AI, especially in finance. I've got 3 people I can bring in right now. They're all competitors, but because they're parents, they're all happy to come in and say their thing. And then we'll take it from there. If a student's got an AI idea or an app idea, maybe they can do something, work with those guys to build on that. So going back to your question, there will still be opportunities where we'll have to use the D&T. For example, we just entered this first robot competition for FRC, the first time ever. So that's why I've been in school during the break as well. So we've been building this bloody kit that arrived from the US. It's a massive thing. So again, that's a lot of schools are doing FRC. There's not many teachers in the school that could actually provide the support to help the students with that FRC, because again, you need the mechanical understanding, the systems understanding, the program. There's so much behind it. Now I know that could be any D&T teacher could run that, but again, we're trying to get students to see that this isn't just D&T. This is big. D&T is a bigger thing than just making stuff all the time. You got to link everything else together. So I don't know if I've answered your question, but
you did answer my question. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I kind of was curious about that, because in some schools I've seen where it's let's have as many connections as possible, and others where there are these different pathways, so to speak.
Yeah.
And and sometimes it ends up being something totally different. You don't know what it's going to be, so that's okay too.
I think the nice thing with this innovation role is, like, the students, obviously there's going to be pressure on students who want to be involved in this, but there's not going to be a report at the end of term or an assessment. That thing just releases a lot of stress and tension from kids. It's going to be like real work. You've got an idea how we're going to get this to work. What sort of people do you need? What's the time frame? Does he need any money behind this? Get people in who can help out. So I think it is quite unique and quite different.
Yeah, that sounds great, John. I cannot wait. Hopefully, maybe I can have you back on here in a couple of years to hear how it's gone and see how it goes.
See maybe how much I've aged.
Around, see how much we've all aged. Absolutely.
I'll probably be still in the same room with the same headset talking to you.
I would probably be in the same place too. I'm with you, man. All right, John. So I'm just going to do a couple of quick things here for you. What book would you recommend that everyone stop right now and read?
I really enjoy stuff by IDEO and D-School and all that kind of stuff. So one I've just been reading, Creative Confidence, Unleashing the Creative Potential Within Us All by the Kelly brothers. So David Kelly, obviously the big D-School guy, and his brother, just talking about the past and how, similar to mine actually, you know, how they were just tinkering and making and building and understanding things. And it's a really cool book. But I listen to a lot more podcasts than I read books. So I really enjoy also the IDEO stuff. There's IDEOU there. There's an amazing thing on food.
I love that one. That one's so good, man.
It's just brilliant. And then Tim Brown stuff. Again, not trying to be naive, but when I read a lot of this stuff, it's just more of a revisiting of things, because a lot of times I'm reading this, I'm thinking, but I'm a D&T teacher. I already do all this. I already know all this. Right. I already know about all this sort of stuff. But I just enjoy listening to other people's stories. Yeah, so that's me. Yeah, and I'd really like, in terms of inspiration, I really very fortunate to have an amazing network of colleagues all around the world. I've met people from conferences and being a speaker and all these things. And Facebook's the Waste Ed. That's a great site, and just all the different D&T groups like Jamble with James and DT networks, all those kind of things. And your show, man, it's great. You know, those
You're
stories.
Too kind.
I love the stories, and that's what I'm about. I like listening to stories and getting people in to tell their stories, and you know, just how difficult sometimes life is when you're trying to launch a product or a brand, and that's how it works. So good job.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind, and I love the stories too, which is the only reason I do this. Really, is just to talk to people and hear their stories. And if we didn't do it, who would do it, right, John?
Absolutely.
I mean, where else would we get it? That's great. If people want to get in touch with you, John, and hear more about your role, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
The best way is probably email, John.Zobrist. I'm on LinkedIn as well. I used to be on Twitter. I went off that. So yeah, I went through a surge of being on too many social media platforms, and then I just jumped off it. So I'm a bit old school. I like the email. I'm not being very innovative there, but it helps. And then just on Facebook, I'm there as well. Yeah,
I'll make sure all of that is included in our show notes so that everyone can get in touch. And I know you've in some of those Facebook groups, like we mentioned with James and some of these others. So I'm sure people can connect with you through those ways too. So John, this has been such a pleasure, man. I am so thankful to hear all about the exciting things you're doing, and I am looking forward to continuing to stay in touch with you. I really appreciate you taking time during crazy time in our lifetime.
No, absolutely.
to connect. It's been really, really great to hear about your stories, and I do want to stay in touch and hear all about this innovation startup that you guys are working on. And so that sounds just like so much fun, and I can't wait to hear some of the stories from that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be carry on listening to your podcast as well to make sure that I'm not missing out on anything, because there must be other people. Hopefully there are other people out there that are trying to do similar things. And I know that Evo as well has tried to do similar things in Dubai.
Heck yeah, that guy is moving around so fast. You never can keep up with wherever Evo is.
It'd be good to continue listening to that as well. But yeah, no, thanks very much, Jason, for inviting me on the show.
Thank you so much, John. I appreciate it. So we have a standing date to do this again in a couple of years when this innovation thing is off the ground, okay?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
All right. Thanks so much. Can't wait to hear it, John. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jason.
I hope you enjoyed that episode of DesignCast. I'm Jason, your host, and I produced and created this podcast. If you have any input, I would love to hear from you, and I look forward to seeing you again really soon.